The dust cloud rose high into the orange sky as Jihoon Park's drilling machine broke through the last layer of hardened earth. He wiped sweat from his forehead and stepped back from the massive hole they had been digging for 3 weeks. New, Seoul was supposed to be empty land ready for human settlers, but the ground scans had shown something strange buried deep below. "Captain, we've hit something solid," called out Minji Kim from beside the drill. She was the team's expert on alien life, though they had never found any aliens on this planet. Her scanner was beeping wildly as she pointed it down into the dark hole. Jihoon climbed down the metal ladder they had lowered into the pit. His boots hit solid stone after 20 meters. When he turned on his flashlight, he could not believe what he saw. The walls around him were covered in smooth metal panels that reflected his light back like mirrors. This was not natural rock. Someone had built this place. "Get down here, everyone," he shouted up to his team. "And bring the big lights." Colonel Hyok Lee was the first to join him, his military boots making loud sounds on the stone floor. He had fought in 3 wars and seen many strange things, but his face showed surprise when he looked around the buried room. "Captain, this looks like human construction," Hyok said, running his hand along the metal walls. "But the scan said this planet was empty for millions of years before we arrived." Minji climbed down next, followed by Dae-ho Yoon, their language expert. Soon all 6 team members stood in the underground chamber, their bright lights showing every detail of the mysterious room. The chamber was large, about the size of a basketball court. The walls were made of some kind of metal that none of them recognized. It did not rust or show any signs of age, even though it must have been buried for a very long time. Strange symbols were carved into panels along the walls, and the symbols looked almost like ancient Korean writing. "Dae-ho, can you read any of this?" Jihoon asked, pointing his light at the nearest wall panel. Dae-ho moved closer to the symbols, his eyes wide with interest. He was young, only 25, but he knew more about old languages than anyone else in the colony. He traced the symbols with his finger, his mouth moving silently as he tried to understand them. "It is Korean," he said finally, his voice full of surprise. "Very old Korean, maybe from Earth's ancient times, but that's impossible. Humans only came to this planet 5 years ago." They explored the chamber for 2 hours, finding 3 corridors, leading deeper into the underground structure. Each corridor had more symbols on the walls, and all of them seemed to point toward something important, hidden further inside. The middle corridor led to a heavy door made of the same strange metal as the walls. The door had no handle or lock that they could see, but it had more Korean symbols carved across its surface. Dae-ho studied them carefully while the others waited. "The silent thunder sleeps," he read slowly. "Wake it only when the stars burn with alien hatred." He looked up at Jihoon with confused eyes. "I don't understand what it means." Hyok stepped forward and pressed his hands against the door. Nothing happened. Minji tried her scanner on it, but the device just showed blank readings. The door seemed to block all their technology. "Let me try something," Dae-ho said. He placed his hand on the center symbol and spoke the Korean words aloud. "The silent thunder sleeps." The door began to glow with soft blue light. Lines of light spread from where Dae-ho touched it, following the carved symbols across the entire surface. Then, with a sound like distant wind, the door slid open. Cold air flowed out from the dark room beyond. Jihoon's flashlight showed another chamber, smaller than the first, with something glowing in the center. They all moved forward together, their lights focused on the glowing object. In the middle of the room stood a clear crystal structure about the size of a large table. It had many sides and angles like a giant diamond, and it glowed with soft white light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The crystal floated 3 feet above a metal platform, turning slowly in the air. "What is that thing?" Minji whispered, her scanner making strange sounds as she pointed it at the crystal. Around the floating crystal, the walls were covered with more Korean writing. These symbols were different from the ones outside. They looked newer somehow, and they covered every surface in the room. Dae-ho began reading them, his voice getting more excited with each line. "These are instructions," he said. "And warnings. They talk about a great device built to protect humanity from something called the Star Killers. But look at this date." He pointed to symbols near the door. If I'm reading this right, this place was built in the year 2019 on Earth. Jihoon felt his heart beating faster. Earth year 2019 was 368 years ago, long before humans had any space travel technology. They could barely reach their own moon back then, and they knew nothing about other planets or alien life. That's not possible, Hyuk said, but his voice was uncertain. Humans in 2019 didn't even know aliens existed. Minji's scanner suddenly began beeping very loudly. She looked at its screen and her face went white. The energy readings from this crystal are off my scale, she said. Whatever this thing is, it contains more power than our entire colony ship. Daeho continued reading the wall symbols. His face showed growing amazement as he translated more of the ancient Korean text. This says the device was built by something called the Guardians of the Last Resort. They hid it here because they knew humanity would need it someday. They knew aliens would come to destroy us. But how could they know that? Jihoon asked. How could people from 2019 know about aliens? I don't know, Daeho answered, still reading. But there's more. This text says the device can only be used once and only when humanity faces complete destruction. It calls the device Heaven's Judgment and says it will save our species when nothing else can. The crystal pulsed brighter as they talked, as if it was listening to their words. Minji stepped closer to it, her scanner still beeping. Captain, I think this thing is responding to us. It's getting more active. Jihoon made a decision. We need to report this to Earth Command immediately. This is too big for us to handle alone. He activated his communication device, but only static came through. That's strange. Communications should work fine from here. Hyuk checked his own equipment. All our communication gear is dead, Captain. Something in this room is blocking our signals. They spent 3 more hours in the chamber, taking pictures and recording everything they could. Daeho translated more of the wall text, finding repeated warnings about the device's power and instructions that seemed to require multiple people to activate it. When they finally climbed back to the surface, the sun was setting over New Seoul's orange sky. Jihoon looked back at the hole they had dug, knowing that their discovery would change everything for humanity. Somewhere in the darkness below, an ancient device waited, built by people who somehow knew that aliens would threaten their descendants among the stars. That night, Jihoon sent an emergency message to Earth Command, requesting immediate assistance from the government's top scientists and military leaders. He did not know that in 3 months, the first alien ships would appear at the edge of human space, making the ancient warnings come true. Professor Sungmin Cho had spent 40 years studying human history, but he had never seen anything like the files spread across his desk in the underground research facility on Europa. The crystal device from New Seoul sat in a sealed chamber, 50 meters below his office, humming with power that made his instruments go crazy whenever he tried to measure it. This is impossible, he muttered, looking at a photograph that should not exist. The picture showed Dr. Yoonji Nam, a quantum physicist from Seoul, South Korea, standing next to blueprints that matched the ancient device exactly. The date on the photograph was March 15th, 2019. Commander Minho Jang entered the office carrying a box of files that had been hidden in secret archives around Earth for over 3 centuries. Each file was marked with symbols that matched the Korean writing found in the New Seoul chamber. The more they uncovered, the more incredible the story became. Professor, you need to see this, Minho said, pulling out a thick journal bound in synthetic leather. We found this in a sealed vault beneath the old Seoul National University. It's Dr. Yoonji Nam's personal research notes. Sungmin opened the journal carefully. The pages were covered with handwritten Korean text, mathematical equations, and strange diagrams that hurt his eyes to look at directly. On the first page, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "I have seen the end of our species," and "I have seen the way to prevent it." According to her notes, Minho continued, Dr. Nam had a near-death experience during heart surgery in January 2019. She claims she saw visions of humanity's future, alien ships destroying Earth's colonies, millions of people dying, and the complete enslavement of the human race. Sungmin read through the journal entries, his amazement growing with each page. Dr. Nam wrote about seeing specific events that had already come true: the discovery of faster-than-light travel, the founding of the first colonies, and even the exact appearance of the Velkari ships now threatening Earth. But how could she see the future? Sungmin asked. And more importantly, how did she convince other people to help her build something this advanced? Minho opened another file and showed Sungmin a list of names. She didn't work alone. Look at this. The Guardians of the Last Resort had members all over Earth: scientists, engineers, military officers, even government officials. They all helped build the device in secret. The list included some of the most brilliant minds of the early 21st century. Dr. Kenji Nakamura, a Japanese engineer who officially died in a car accident but whose body was never found. General Patricia Williams, an American military strategist who disappeared during a classified mission. Professor Chen Wei, a Chinese materials scientist who supposedly retired but whose pension payments continued for 60 years after his death. They faked their deaths, Sungmin realized. The entire group went underground to work on this project. It gets stranger, Minho said, opening a sealed envelope. We found genetic records hidden in the archives. Each Guardian had children before joining the project, and those children were sent to different colonies with new identities. The Guardians then used experimental memory modification technology to erase their own knowledge of the project. Sungmin studied the genetic charts that Minho spread across the desk. Complex family trees showed how the Guardian bloodlines had spread across human space over the centuries. The descendants of the original Guardians were now living on 12 different worlds, most of them completely unaware of their heritage. The device requires genetic keys from at least 7 different bloodlines to activate, Sungmin said, reading from Dr. Nam's notes. But there's something else here. Listen to this. The device will only function when humanity faces true extinction, and when the activation is chosen by democratic vote across all human worlds. Minho frowned. A vote? They built a weapon that requires permission from the entire human race to use? Dr. Nam was very concerned about the moral implications, Sungmin explained, reading more of her journal. She wrote that the device could be calibrated to kill or to modify. It could eliminate an entire species, or it could change them in more subtle ways. The two men spent the next several hours going through more files, uncovering layer after layer of the Guardians' incredible plan. The original group had included experts in genetics, psychology, and even philosophy. They had debated every aspect of the device's creation and use. Dr. Nam's final journal entry was dated March 20th, 2019, just 5 days before her official death. Sungmin read it aloud. We have finished the great work. The device is complete and hidden where humanity will find it when the time comes. We have scattered our children to the stars and erased our memories so that the weapon's existence cannot be discovered by our enemies. If you are reading this, then the visions have come true and our species stands at the edge of extinction. Use the device wisely, for it carries the power to save or damn us all. Minho activated his communication device and contacted the search teams that were racing to find the Guardian descendants across human space. Search Team Alpha, what's your status? Captain Seonghwan. O's voice came through the speaker. We've found 3 potential genetic matches on New Tokyo Colony. Running verification tests now. Team Beta reports 2 matches on Busan Station, and Team Gamma has identified 4 possibilities on Seoul Prime. How long until we have all 7 bloodlines? Minho asked. At least 18 hours, assuming the Velkari don't interfere with our ships. Sungmin looked at the wall display showing the Velkari fleet surrounding Earth. The alien ships had moved closer during the night, and their communications had become more threatening. The final ultimatum would expire in 36 hours. There's something else we need to discuss, Sungmin said, opening another section of Dr. Nam's journal. The Guardians knew that using the device would make humanity a target for other alien species. According to her visions, there are much more powerful civilizations out there, and they won't tolerate a species that can kill with thought alone. Minho studied the pages that Sungmin showed him. The journal described Dr. Nam's visions of creatures, called the Harbingers, ancient aliens who had been manipulating younger species for millions of years. The Velkari were just one of many species that had been modified to serve as unwilling soldiers in the Harbinger's cosmic empire. She saw that too? Minho asked in amazement. Dr. Nam's vision showed her everything, Sungmin said. The Velkari aren't naturally aggressive. They were genetically modified by the Harbingers to be eternal conquerors. The device can reverse that modification and free them from their compulsive need to dominate other species. The communication device buzzed again. Dr. Jaewon Shin's voice came through from the device chamber below. Professor Cho, you need to get down here immediately. The crystal is responding to something. It's getting brighter, and the energy readings are off the charts. Sungmin and Minho rushed to the elevator that led to the secure chamber 50 meters below the surface. As they descended, they could feel a vibration in the walls around them, as if the entire moon of Europa was humming in harmony with the ancient device. The chamber door slid open to reveal Dr. Shin standing before the floating crystal, his instruments beeping wildly in his hands. The device was no longer just glowing. It was pulsing with waves of light that seemed to move through dimensions beyond normal space. What's happening? Sungmin asked. I think it knows, Dr. Shin said, his voice filled with awe. The device is responding to the approaching Velkari fleet. It's like it can sense the presence of the modified aliens and is preparing to activate. But we don't have the genetic keys yet, Minho protested. Maybe we don't need all of them, Dr. Shin suggested. Maybe the device can work with fewer keys if the threat is immediate enough. Sungmin opened Dr. Nam's journal to the final pages, looking for any information about emergency activation procedures. What he found made his blood run cold. According to this, the device has a fail-safe mode, he said slowly. If humanity faces immediate extinction and cannot gather all the genetic keys in time, the device will activate using whatever keys are available. But, he paused, reading the warning written in Dr. Nam's careful handwriting. But what? Minho demanded. The fail-safe mode cannot be controlled or calibrated. It would kill every Velkari in the galaxy, not just modify them. Dr. Nam called it the option of last resort and warned that using it would make humanity into the very monsters we're fighting against. The crystal pulsed brighter, as if it had heard his words and was waiting for humanity to make its choice. 3 months after the discovery on New Sol, Ambassador Soo-young Choi stood in the main meeting hall of Federation Station, watching the largest alien ship she had ever seen dock at the station's military port. The ship was black as space itself, and shaped like a giant sword pointed toward the human sections of the station. The Velkari had arrived exactly as the ancient warnings predicted. Soo-young had been Earth's top diplomat for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Velkari sent their message 3 days ago, demanding that all human colonies surrender immediately or face complete destruction. They claimed that humans were a threat to galactic peace and must be controlled. Admiral Young-hee Kang entered the meeting hall wearing her full military uniform. Her face was hard as stone, and her eyes showed the kind of anger that came from knowing your enemy was stronger than you. Behind her walked Colonel Hyuk Lee, who had flown directly from New Seoul with urgent news about the ancient device. Ambassador, the Velkari have given us their final terms, Young-hee said, handing Soo-young a data tablet. Complete surrender of all human military forces, immediate evacuation of 12 colony worlds, and acceptance of Velkari governors on all remaining human planets. They want an answer in 72 hours. Soo-young read the terms twice, her hands shaking slightly. The Velkari were not asking for peace talks or negotiation. They were demanding total control over humanity. What about the other Federation? Species, will they help us? The Centauri Council voted to stay neutral, Young-hee said bitterly. The Rigel Assembly did the same. Everyone is too afraid of Velkari technology to stand with us. Hyuk stepped forward, his face showing the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. Admiral, we need to tell her about the device. The situation has changed. Young-hee nodded grimly. 3 hours ago, the Velkari demonstrated their power. They destroyed Titan Base. Soo-young felt the blood drain from her face. Titan Base was home to 50,000 people, including miners, scientists, and their families. It was one of humanity's most important research stations. Destroyed? You mean damaged? I mean completely gone, Young-hee said. Their quantum disruptor weapons turned the entire base into space dust in less than 10 seconds. 50,000 people died without any warning. The meeting hall fell silent except for the hum of the station's air systems. So-young had known many of the people at Titan Base personally. Dr. Jae-won Shin's wife had worked there. Tae-hyung Lim's entire family lived there. How is this possible? So-young whispered. Our intelligence said the Valkyrie were advanced, but not this advanced. Hyuk pulled out his own data tablet and showed them a recording from the attack. The screen showed Titan Base as a bright cluster of lights against Saturn's rings. Then a single beam of red light touched the base, and everything simply disappeared. No explosion, no debris field, just empty space where 50,000 humans had been living moments before. Our weapons cannot even scratch their ship shields, Young-hee said. I sent 3 destroyers to test their defenses after the attack. Our best plasma cannons hit their smallest scout ship for 5 minutes straight. The ship didn't even slow down. Dr. Jae-won Shin entered the meeting hall at that moment, his eyes red from crying. He had received news about his wife's death just an hour ago, but he came to the meeting anyway because he knew humanity needed him. As Earth's leading expert on quantum physics, he was the only person who understood what they had found on New Seoul. Dr. Shin? So-young said gently. I'm sorry for your loss. Jae-won nodded but did not speak. He sat down at the meeting table and activated his holographic display. The image of the crystal device from New Seoul appeared in the air above the table, rotating slowly and glowing with the same white light they had seen 3 months ago. I've been studying this device since Captain Park's team found it, Jae-won said, his voice steady despite his grief. The technology is impossible according to everything we know about physics. It operates on principles that should not exist. What kind of principles? So-young asked. It manipulates what I call biological quantum signatures, Jae-won explained. Every living thing has a unique quantum pattern based on its DNA and neural structure. This device can target those patterns with perfect accuracy across vast distances. Young-hee leaned forward. Are you saying it's a weapon? The most powerful weapon ever created, Jae-won confirmed. Based on my calculations, it could eliminate every member of a specific species within a 50 light-year radius. It would target their genetic code and simply turn off their life force. The implications of his words hit everyone in the room at the same time. So-young felt her heart racing as she understood what this meant. Could it work against the Valkyrie? Theoretically, yes, Jae-won said. But there are problems. First, we would need complete genetic information about the Valkyrie to program the device. Second, the power requirements are enormous. And third, he paused, looking uncomfortable. Third, what? Young-hee demanded. The device requires multiple human genetic keys to activate. The ancient texts that Daeho translated mention something called the bloodlines of the Guardians. Without those specific people, the device cannot be turned on. Hyuk had been studying the ancient Korean writings for months since the discovery. He spread paper copies of the translations across the table. The original builders of this device were part of a secret group called the Guardians of the Last Resort. They scattered their children across Earth's colonies and erased their own memories of the project. Why would they do that? So-young asked. Because they knew that if aliens discovered the device too early, they would destroy humanity before we could use it, Hyuk explained. The Guardians' descendants carry genetic keys in their DNA, but they don't know who they are. A communication alert sounded in the meeting hall. A young officer ran in and handed Young-hee an urgent message. Her face went even more grim as she read it. The Valkyrie have moved their fleet to attack position around Earth, she announced. 200 ships, each one larger than our biggest battleship. They're demanding our surrender in 48 hours, not 72. What about our defenses? So-young asked, though she already knew the answer. Earth's orbital defense grid could destroy maybe 5 of their ships before they overload our shields, Young-hee said. Then Earth would suffer the same fate as Titan. Base. Dr. Jae-won stood up suddenly, his grief replaced by determination. We have to find the Guardian bloodlines and activate the device. It's humanity's only chance. How do we find them? So-young asked. If they don't know who they are and Their ancestors erased all records. The ancient texts mentioned specific colony worlds where the Guardians sent their children, Hayek said, pointing to his translations. New Tokyo, Busan Station, Seoul Prime, and 6 other human settlements. If we can gather genetic samples from the populations of those colonies, that could take months, Young-hee interrupted. We have less than 2 days. Then we start immediately, Su-young said, making her decision. Admiral, recall every fast ship in the fleet. Dr. Shin, prepare the device for transportation to a secure location. Colonel Lee, get me a complete list of those colony worlds. As her team rushed to carry out orders. Su-young looked out the meeting hall's window at the Velkari ship docked nearby. Its black surface seemed to absorb all light, like a piece of space that had been cut out and shaped into a weapon. Somewhere inside that ship, aliens were planning the conquest or destruction of her entire species. But somewhere in human space, the descendants of ancient guardians were living normal lives, not knowing that the survival of humanity might depend on the genetic keys hidden in their blood. Su-young whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening, asking them to help humanity find those keys before it was too late. In 46 hours, the Velkari would begin their final attack on Earth. The ancient device that had waited for centuries in the darkness of New Seoul might be humanity's only hope for survival. Captain Seung-hwan gripped the controls of his fast scout ship as he raced through space toward New Tokyo Colony. Behind him, the Velkari fleet was spreading across human territory like a dark cancer, but his mission was more important than his own safety. Somewhere on New Tokyo lived the descendants of the ancient guardians, and without them, the device could not be properly controlled. Captain, we're receiving distress signals from the outer colonies, his communications officer reported. The Velkari have begun bombardment of military installations on 3 worlds. Seung-hwan checked his navigation display. 2 hours until they reached New Tokyo, assuming the Velkari didn't intercept them first. Any word from the other search teams? Team Beta found their targets on Busan Station. Nyeon Park and Dong-hyuk Kim have confirmed genetic matches to the Guardian bloodlines. Team Gamma reports success on Seoul Prime. They located Chae-young, Lee, and 2 others. That made 5 genetic keys found out of the 7 they needed. Seung-hwan's team had to find the remaining 2, or humanity would be forced to use the device's uncontrolled failsafe mode. On Europa, Dr. Yeonjun Baek worked frantically in the device chamber, trying to decode the activation sequence from Dr. Nam's ancient notes. The crystal had grown brighter over the past 6 hours, and its energy readings were now strong enough to interfere with electronic equipment throughout the research facility. The mathematical equations are incredible, he muttered, writing calculations on a holographic display. Dr. Nam somehow combined quantum mechanics with genetic theory and dimensional physics. She was 3 centuries ahead of her time. President Jeong Nam stood beside him, watching the numbers scroll across the displays. As the great-great-granddaughter of Dr. Yoonji Nam, she carried one of the most important genetic keys, but she also carried the weight of her ancestors' moral concerns about the device. Dr. Baek, what exactly will happen when we activate this thing? She asked. That depends on how we calibrate it, Yeonjun explained. With all 7 genetic keys and proper programming, we can target specific neural pathways in the Velkari brain. We could remove their aggressive instincts while leaving everything else intact. And without proper calibration? Yeonjun's face was grim. Every Velkari in 50 light-years would die instantly. Men, women, children, innocent civilians, everyone. President Nam looked at the crystal device floating in its energy field. The weight of the decision ahead felt like it might crush her. In 18 hours, the representatives of every human colony would vote on whether to use the device. The choice was simple: activate the weapon and possibly commit genocide, or allow humanity to be enslaved or destroyed. Meanwhile, on Federation Station, Ambassador Soo-young Choi was preparing for one final attempt at diplomacy. The Velkari had agreed to meet with her, though their terms made it clear they expected nothing but surrender. The alien ambassador who entered the meeting room was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to reflect light from impossible angles. His eyes were completely black, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. I am War Commander Zethek of the Velkari Empire, he said without any greeting. You have 12 hours to accept our terms. After that, we begin the cleansing of your species. Why? Su-young asked simply. What have humans done to threaten you? Zethek's black eyes showed no emotion. Your species grows too quickly and spreads too far. You will become competition for territory and resources. Better to control you now while you are weak. We could share the galaxy peacefully. There's room for everyone. Peace is weakness, Zethek replied automatically, as if the words were programmed into his mind. The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the natural order. Su-young studied the alien's face as he spoke. Something about his responses seemed wrong, like he was reciting lines from a script rather than expressing his own thoughts. Do all Velkari believe this? For just a moment, something flickered in Zethek's black eyes. A hint of confusion, maybe even pain. Then his expression hardened again. All Velkari serve the Empire. We exist to expand and conquer. Any who think otherwise are defective. The meeting ended with no progress toward peace. As Zethek left, Su-young noticed that he moved like someone fighting against invisible chains. His aggressive words didn't match the subtle sadness she glimpsed in his posture. Back on New Tokyo Colony, Captain Seung-hwan finally located his targets. Min-Soo Jang and Hyerin Ko were both civilians who had no idea they carried Guardian genetics in their DNA. Min-Soo worked as a teacher in the colony's primary school, while Hyerin managed a small restaurant near the spaceport. I don't understand, Min-Soo said as Seung-hwan explained the situation. My family has lived on New Tokyo for 5 generations. We're just normal people. Your great-great-grandfather was one of the original Guardians, Seung-hwan explained. He helped build a device that might save humanity, but we need your genetic signature to activate it properly. Hyerin looked skeptical. And if we refuse? Then millions of people will die, Seung-hwan said honestly, including everyone on this colony. Both civilians agreed to help after Seung-hwan showed them recordings of the Velkari attack on Titan base. Within an hour, they were aboard his scout ship racing back toward Europa with the final genetic keys humanity needed. On Europa, the pressure was building as the deadline approached. Colonel Sang-woo Park was coordinating the defense of critical human installations, but everyone knew it was hopeless. The Velkari had overwhelming technological superiority. Enemy ships are moving into attack positions around Earth, he reported to President Nam. Our orbital defenses might hold them off for an hour, maybe 2. Dr. Yeonjun Baek looked up from his calculations. I've figured out the activation sequence, but there's still the question of calibration. With all 7 genetic keys, I can program the device to modify the Velkari instead of killing them. But the process will take at least 6 hours. How long do we have? President Nam asked. The Velkari will begin their final attack in 8 hours. President Nam activated the emergency communication system that connected every human colony. Her image appeared on screens across human space as she prepared to address her entire species. Citizens of humanity, she began, we face the greatest crisis in our history. An alien empire has given us a choice. Surrender our freedom or face extinction. But we have discovered a weapon left by our ancestors, a device that could save us all. She explained the situation honestly, including the moral implications of using the device. The weapon could kill every Velkari in the galaxy, or it could be used more precisely to remove their aggressive programming. But using it either way would reveal humanity's power to other alien civilizations that might be even more dangerous than the Velkari. This decision cannot be made by governments or military leaders alone, President Nam continued. Every human being must have a voice in choosing our species' future. You have 6 hours to vote. As the voting began across human space, the 7 Guardian descendants gathered in the device chamber on Europa. Nyan Park, Dong-hyuk Kim, Chae-young Lee, Min-Soo Jang, Hyerin Ko, President Jeong Nam, and Dr. Yeonjun Baek stood around the floating crystal, each one carrying genetic keys that had been hidden for centuries. Whatever we decide, Nyan said quietly, our ancestors saw this moment coming. They built this device because they knew we would need it. The crystal pulsed brighter, responding to their presence. Energy readings spiked as the device prepared for activation. Somewhere in space, the Valkyrie fleet moved closer to Earth, unaware that humanity held a weapon that could change the fate of the galaxy. The vote continued as time ran out. Humanity had to choose between survival and morality, between salvation and damnation. In 3 hours, the results would be announced. And the ancient device would either save the human race or transform it into something unrecognizable. The voting results appeared on screens throughout human space, just as the Valkyrie fleet moved into final attack position around Earth. Counselor Hyejin Yu stood in the emergency session hall on Luna Base, watching the numbers with growing despair. Humanity was divided almost equally. 43% voted to use the device at full power to destroy the Valkyrie, 41% voted against using it at all, and 16% remained undecided. "We need a clear majority to proceed," she announced to the assembled representatives. "The device cannot be activated without democratic approval from our species." General Kyung-ho Jung slammed his fist on the table. "While we debate philosophy, the Valkyrie are preparing to exterminate us. Sometimes survival has to come before moral purity. And sometimes preserving our humanity is more important than preserving our lives," Hyejin replied firmly. "If we become genocidal killers, what makes us better than the aliens we're fighting?" On Europa, Dr. Ariam Song was making a discovery that could change everything. She had spent the last 12 hours studying the device's internal structure using quantum scanners, and what she found amazed her. "Dr. Bayek, you need to see this," she called out, pointing to her display screen. "The device isn't just a weapon, it's a precision medical instrument on a galactic scale." Yunjun hurried over to look at her readings. "What do you mean? I can see how it targets genetic patterns, but there are thousands of different calibration settings. Look at these parameters. It can modify specific neural pathways, remove genetic programming, even repair damaged DNA. Dr. Nam didn't just build a weapon. She built a tool for healing entire species." Dr. Ariam pulled up detailed schematics that showed the device's true capabilities. "According to these readings, we could target only the Valkyrie's artificial aggression programming while leaving everything else intact. We could free them from whatever made them into conquerors without hurting them." President Nam studied the new information carefully. This changed the moral equation completely. Instead of choosing between genocide and extinction, humanity might have a third option. "How long would this targeted approach take?" she asked. 6 hours to calibrate properly," Yeonjun answered. "But we'd need to start the process now, before the voting deadline." "Do it," President Nam decided. "Begin the calibration for selective modification. If the vote approves activation, we'll be ready to use the device correctly." The 7 Guardian descendants took their positions around the crystal device. Each one placed their hand on a metal panel that had been hidden beneath the chamber floor. The panels glowed as they recognized the genetic keys, and the floating crystal began to spin faster. Ancient Korean words appeared in the air around the device, glowing with the same white light as the crystal. Daiho Yoon, who had flown to Europa to help with the translation, read them aloud. "The silent thunder awakens. Let wisdom guide its voice, and let mercy temper its judgment." On Federation Station, Ambassador Soo-young Choi received an urgent communication from War Commander Zethek. The Valkyrie wanted one final meeting before beginning their attack. "Ambassador," Zethek said when they met, "my commanders have detected strange energy readings from your colonies. What new weapon are you preparing?" Soo-young looked into his black eyes and made a decision to tell him the truth. "We have a device that could stop your invasion, but using it might hurt innocent Valkyrie civilians. Is there any way to avoid this war?" Something strange happened to Zethek's face when she mentioned innocent civilians. For a moment, his aggressive expression cracked, and she saw genuine confusion underneath. "Civilians," he repeated slowly, as if the word was unfamiliar. Why do I feel strange when you say that word?" "Because part of you remembers what your species was like before they changed you," Soo-young said gently. "The Valkyrie weren't always conquerors, were they? Zethek gripped his head with both hands, his silver skin growing pale. No, that's impossible. We have always been warriors. We exist to expand the Empire. But... He looked up at her with eyes that suddenly seemed less black and more gray. I dream sometimes of green fields and peaceful cities. Are those false memories? They might be real memories, Suyong suggested. What if someone took away your ability to choose peace? What if you're being controlled? Before Zethek could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. His communication device activated, and an angry Velkari voice shouted orders, in their harsh language. Zethek's confused expression vanished, replaced by the cold mask of a military commander. You have tried to deceive me, he said, his voice mechanical again. The attack begins now. On Earth, Admiral Wonho Kim watched from the orbital defense platform as 200 Velkari ships moved into attack formation. Their black hulls reflected no light, making them look like tears in space itself. All defensive batteries, prepare to fire, he ordered. Target the lead ships and give them everything we have. The first exchange lasted exactly 37 seconds. Earth's most powerful weapons struck the Velkari fleet with enough energy to destroy a small moon. The alien ships didn't even slow down. Their return fire destroyed half of Earth's orbital defenses in a single volley. Admiral, we're getting reports from the colonies, his communications officer announced. Velkari ships are attacking New Tokyo, Busan Station, and Seoul Prime simultaneously. They're not just targeting military installations. They're hitting civilian population centers. On Luna Base, Counselor Hagen watched the attack reports with growing horror. The Velkari were systematically destroying human civilization, and there was nothing conventional weapons could do to stop them. Emergency vote, she announced. All in favor of activating the device immediately, regardless of calibration time. The vote was swift and decisive. Faced with the extinction of their species, humanity chose survival. 78% approved immediate activation of the device. On Europa, the activation sequence began as soon as the vote results came through. The 7 Guardian descendants stood around the spinning crystal as energy built up inside the chamber. Dr. Yeonjun worked frantically at his control station, trying to complete the calibration in time. How long do we have? President Nam asked. The Velkari will reach Earth's surface in 40 minutes, came the reply from Admiral Kim. Our orbital defenses are gone. Dr. Uriam looked at her readings. The device is charging faster than expected. It's like it knows the urgency of the situation. Technician Seo-hyun Lee monitored the power flow as energy levels climbed toward activation threshold. 30 seconds to full charge. Dr. Beck, is the calibration ready? Yeonjun's hands flew over his controls as he input the final parameters. Almost there. I need 10 more seconds. The crystal stopped spinning and began to glow with blinding white light. Energy waves spread out from it, moving through dimensions that human science barely understood. Every Velkari ship in 50 light-years suddenly detected something impossible. A weapon that operated outside the laws of physics as they knew them. On his flagship approaching Earth, War Commander Zethek felt a strange sensation in his mind. The constant pressure that had driven him to conquer and destroy for his entire life suddenly began to fade. For the first time in decades, he could think clearly. What is happening to me? He whispered, looking at his hands as if seeing them. For the first time, around him, his crew members were experiencing the same thing. The artificial aggression that had defined their species was being carefully removed by the ancient device, leaving behind the peaceful civilization they had been before the Harbingers modified them. On Europa, Dr. Yeonjun completed the calibration, with 2 seconds to spare. Ready for selective activation, he announced. This will remove their aggressive programming without causing physical harm. President Nam looked around at the other Guardian descendants. Are we all in agreement? This is humanity's choice, not to destroy our enemies, but to free them. All 7 nodded. Together they spoke the ancient Korean words that would activate the device. Let the silent thunder speak with mercy. The energy wave erupted from the crystal and spread across the galaxy at faster than light speed, reaching every Velkari ship and colony within 50 light-years. The effect was immediate and precise. The artificial genetic modifications that had turned them into conquerors simply vanished, restoring their original peaceful nature. War Commander Zethek collapsed to his knees on his ship's bridge, tears streaming down his silver face as he remembered who his people used to be. Around him, his crew members were experiencing the same awakening, the same return to their true selves. "Cease all attacks," he ordered, his voice filled with horror at what they had been doing. "Contact the human defenders. We need to apologize for what we've done." The device had worked perfectly. Humanity had chosen mercy over vengeance, healing over destruction. But as the energy wave continued to spread across the galaxy, it would soon reach other alien civilizations, including the ancient harbingers who had created the Velkari as their unwilling servants. The real war was about to begin.